I once worked as a direct care aide for a 65-year-old woman with a developmental disability. Her daughter, who was in her 40s, worked overnights, and she needed a caretaker with medical experience to watch her overnight. When I say I once worked for them, I mean I literally worked once, just this night. And you're about to hear why I never went back. The 65-year-old woman's name was Giselle. Her daughter's name, who contacted me, was Evelyn. It's possible Evelyn didn't have any other family to watch her and didn't want to or couldn't afford to put Giselle in a nursing home. Or it was possible that she felt more comfortable hiring somebody with some form of experience to watch over her. At the time, I was already a direct care worker for 2 other women who suffered from some forms of developmental disabilities, so I had experience, but nothing prepared me for that night. Evelyn left for work earlier that day. I worked my first job, so I was really pushing my body to exhaustion, trying to make as much money as possible. Evelyn had introduced Giselle and me. Giselle had given me a smile before Evelyn brought her upstairs to her bedroom for the night. It was around 9 p.m. Evelyn told me that Giselle would sometimes walk around the house at night, acting confused, and I'd need to calm her down and bring her back to her room. She specifically addressed this not to be a form of sleepwalking. When I asked, she said it's one of the symptoms of her mother's dementia. I told her to rest assured that I'd know how to handle it. I spent my time initially in the living room, catching up on my show. These jobs aren't super glamorous, and for the most part, it is a lot of sitting around. I heard footsteps from upstairs. I went to the stairway and looked up the stairs, then called Giselle's name, asking if she needed anything. She didn't answer. I heard her footsteps go back to her room, and then the door closed. Maybe she went to the bathroom. I went back to the living room and watched some more TV. It was maybe an hour later that I got up to grab my sandwich that I brought from the fridge. As I left the kitchen with a plate and my sandwich to go back to the couch, I nearly had a heart attack and dropped the plate when I saw Giselle standing at the doorway, glass shattered everywhere. I apologized to her and asked if she was okay. She started yelling at me, "Who are you?" I reminded her who I am, that I'm her direct care worker here to make sure she's okay. Everything she said at this point was in a loud scream, "Why are you here? I don't know you." Things of that nature. I reminded her that we had just met and that her daughter Evelyn hired me to watch her and the house. This seemed to work for long enough for me to get her to come back upstairs with me and to her room. I brought her up a glass of water and some melatonin. I made sure she took both before going back downstairs. After a few hours, I was absolutely exhausted. I had to get a couple of hours of shut-eye. There was a spare bedroom upstairs with a twin-sized bed where Evelyn said I could rest if needed. I felt like at this point, Giselle was asleep for the night from the melatonin. I fell asleep within minutes, but I was asleep for only maybe an hour. I woke up to a sound from downstairs. It was this repeated slamming every 1 to 2 seconds. Something from downstairs was being slammed. I jumped out of the bed. I had left the bedroom door open so that I'd hear anything if Giselle got up, case in point, right here. When I got to the stairs, I realized the slamming was coming from the kitchen. I walked down the stairs as quickly as I could while still remaining quiet. Getting to the bottom, I peered around the opening to the kitchen, and what I saw was like a scene from a scary movie I'd seen before. I saw Giselle in the darkness, standing in front of the oven, repeatedly opening it and slamming it shut. It was horrifying. When I say I saw Giselle, I really only saw her silhouette. It was that dark in the kitchen. I said, "Giselle," really loudly. She stopped, turned to her left at me, shut the oven door one final time, and started walking towards me, towards the stairs. I said in a now softer, kind of scared-sounding voice, "Are you okay?" She got close enough to me where I could now see her facial features, and she looked at me with this blank expression, then walked right past me and started walking up the stairs. I followed her upstairs, but as soon as she got to her room, she slammed her door shut. I knocked on the door, saying, "Giselle, are you all right?" She didn't respond. I quietly opened the door just to peek inside, and I saw Giselle at the side of her bed, just standing facing the wall. I've seen a lot, but this was some pretty unsettling behavior that I feel like is the exact kind of stuff you'd see in some scary movies, like I mentioned before. I walked over to her and gently eased her into the bed. When she was lying down, I covered her, and for what I was hoping would be the final time, I said, "Good night, Giselle," and shut her door. I went across the upstairs to the spare room and went back to bed. I purposely tried not to fall asleep for at least half an hour, just in case she'd wake up again, but I don't even know if I made it that long. All I know is I fell asleep pretty freaking quickly. I woke up once again, however, much later. The room was still pitch black, and the 1-hour alarm I set had not yet gone off. I looked around the room, wondering what woke me up. I didn't see what it was until I heard a sound from inside the closet. I then noticed the cracked open closet door and the black shadow of a head peeking out of the closet. Again, I almost had a heart attack. I said, "Giselle." She didn't answer. I kept saying, "Giselle," a bunch of times until she pushed the door open and I saw her approaching the bed slowly. She started saying what she was saying hours ago again, "Who are you? I don't know you." As she got closer, I tried calming her down, reminding her who I am. I reached for the lamp next to the bed and fumbled with it until it turned on. Giselle was holding a huge kitchen knife in her hand. At this moment, everything changed. Giselle was now a threat to my life, and I had to worry about myself, not her. I screamed at this point, "Giselle, put the knife down." I guess my scream stressed her out because she got closer and started screaming back at me, still repeating, "I don't know you." I wasn't going to attempt to calm down a knife-wielding dementia patient. That was not in any job description. I mapped out a way to run around her in the bedroom, and I went for it. I jumped off the bed on the side further from her, and she screamed again, "Who are you?" She swung the knife at the air as I ran past her. It was a slow and weak swipe from what I saw, but nonetheless, it showed that she had intentions of actually using it. I got downstairs, grabbed my shoes, and went outside. Instead of calling 911, I called Evelyn as she requested I do if there was an issue. I was courteous in doing this because getting law enforcement involved is never doing anyone any favors. Evelyn was yelling into the phone at me not to leave her. Honestly, I yelled back that she attempted to kill me and that I didn't call the police. She had to leave work. Of course, I stayed outside of the house, making sure Giselle didn't go anywhere until Evelyn returned. When Evelyn went inside, Giselle was back in her bed, asleep. Evelyn went as far as accusing me of exaggerating the whole thing until she found the knife next to Giselle's bed. To not give her any more fuel to blame me for any of this, I left out the fact that I ever went to sleep. But that doesn't mean that I felt in any way I did anything wrong. Evelyn even offered me that room to sleep. I never worked in that house again. Giselle was a scarier patient than I'd ever dealt with in any of my jobs in my 9 years of being a direct care aide. Scoring my first job at Dollar Tree felt like a total steal at 18. Sure, it was just a junky discount shop in a fading strip mall, but to me, it meant real freedom, a paycheck of my very own and a taste of independence. I'd bike over after school and work the register, occasionally stocking shelves when things slowed. The gig was mad easy: unpack boxes, slap price stickers on stuff, align everything tidy on the wire racks. My boss, Mr. Harvey, was this ancient dude who spent most shifts barricaded in his office, grumbling over spreadsheets, so I pretty much ran the front solo. No biggie for a small store peddling paper plates and off-brand sodas. We got all types wandering in off the highway nearby: truckers, moms with screaming kids, bored teenagers. The location meant Dollar Tree drew its share of odd ducks. Mostly, I didn't care as long as they didn't shoplift or harass normal shoppers. But there was this one woman who freaked me out from the start. She looked maybe 60 but seemed way older with her hunched posture and slow shuffling gait. Everything about her gave off this deep, ominous vibe that raised my neck hairs. Her steel gray hair was short and matted, dark beady eyes shone too alert beneath bushy masculine brows. Her permanent scowl revealed yellowed teeth, several broken. She'd lurk the aisles silently for hours, examining random junk. I'd find her glaring when I restocked shelves, not saying anything. If asked if she needed help, she'd just grunt and shuffle away. Her silence felt hostile, menacing. Still, I figured she was just another eccentric. Despite those disturbing vibes, I mentioned her to Mr. Harvey. He just squinted thoughtfully before shrugging. Seen her around. Keep an eye out, I guess, but we can't kick out paying customers 'cause they seem off. She causes real trouble, I'll ban her. Otherwise, forget it. So creepy lady's visits became routine. Amping up my unease whenever she appeared, my attempts at politeness went ignored, deepening her air of ominous instability. But things seemed harmless until that last closing shift. I was wiping down the front counter when she emerged from the seasonal aisle, clutching the biggest butcher knife from our depressingly small kitchenware section. My adrenaline spiked immediately. She just stood watching me, the blade glinting beneath the fluorescent lights. No words, but her dark gaze conveyed enough murderous intent to chill my pounding blood. I tried reasoning with her as she rounded the counter, weapon poised, but of course she stayed stoically silent. Backing away slowly, I scanned desperately for anything to defend myself. Flight instinct took over. I made a break for the storage room, hoping to take refuge inside. Just as I lunged through the doorway, her wiry old arm wrapped around my throat, jerking me violently against her. Rancid breath hit my face as she positioned the knife's sharp tip at my heaving sternum. Survival mode kicked in. I thrashed and elbowed wildly, feeling her ribs beneath her moth-eaten cardigan. We crashed into rickety shelves, sending boxes raining down. She slashed at me erratically with the long blade, ripping my shirt sleeve as I desperately dodged her strikes. Somehow, I spun loose and scrambled free, stumbling over scattered merchandise. Behind me, I heard Mr. Harvey roar, "Drop it, lady." Turning, I saw him stride in, brandishing a dented metal bat. With one brutal swing, he knocked the knife from her hand. She recoiled, clutching one loose fist. For a split second, her face morphed from rage to confused fear. Then she bolted out the open back door into the gathering dusk. Police searched well into nightfall with no luck tracking her down. Turns out the silent recluse was Mrs. Anurin, Harvey's mentally ill sister-in-law. Her husband left long ago, unable to handle her violent schizophrenia worsened by homelessness and refusal to properly medicate. She drifted in and out of the area for decades, occasionally rattling Harvey by showing up without warning. I almost felt bad for the old guy, having to see his unstable in-law carted off by authorities once located. The call came in around noon. Nothing out of the ordinary, just a disturbance at an old house on the edge of town. My first day on the force and I was itching to prove myself. The dispatcher said it sounded like a simple domestic dispute, some old man screaming at his neighbors maybe. They gave me the address and I was off. The house was a relic from another era, sagging under the weight of neglect. The yard was a jungle of overgrown weeds and the porch sagged like a broken limb. As I approached, I noticed the windows were grimy, obscured by years of dirt and dust, making it impossible to see inside. I knocked on the door, the sound echoing through the stillness. "Police, anyone home?" I called out. No response. I knocked again, louder this time, and the door creaked open, revealing a dark hallway cluttered with old furniture and stacks of newspapers. "Hello, police." "Police officer, I'm here to help," I announced, stepping inside. The air was thick with the stench of rot and decay. My hand instinctively moved to the grip of my gun as I ventured further. I heard a faint, almost imperceptible shuffling noise coming from the back of the house. "Sir, ma'am, I'm coming in," I said, my voice steady. The shuffling grew louder, accompanied by the unmistakable sound of something being dragged across the floor. I rounded a corner into the kitchen, and the sight that met my eyes stopped me cold. An elderly man was lying on the floor, his body contorted in a way that no living person could manage. His eyes were wide open, staring blankly at the ceiling, and his mouth was twisted in a silent scream. "Jesus," I muttered, rushing to his side. I checked for a pulse but found none. That's when I noticed the blood, a thick dark pool spreading out from under him. I called it in, requesting backup and an ambulance, though I knew it was too late for the latter. As I waited, I decided to check the rest of the house. The shuffling noise continued, growing more distinct and closer. I followed the sound to a door at the end of the hallway. It was slightly ajar, and as I pushed it open, I was hit with a wave of putrid air. The room was dimly lit, the only source of light being a small grimy window. In the center of the room was a large wooden wardrobe. The shuffling was coming from inside. I approached cautiously, my heart pounding in my chest. With one swift motion, I flung the wardrobe doors open, and there, amidst a pile of old clothes and junk, was a young woman, her eyes wild with terror. "Please don't hurt me," she whimpered, recoiling from the light. "It's okay," I said softly, reaching out a hand. "I'm here to help." "What's your name?" "Hillary," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Hillary, can you tell me what happened here?" She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "He kept us here, wouldn't let us leave." "Who did?" I asked, but she just kept shaking her head, her eyes darting around the room as if expecting him to return at any moment. I helped her out of the wardrobe and guided her towards the front of the house. "Stay here," I said. "Backup is on the way." As I turned to go back inside, she grabbed my arm. "Wait, there's more in the basement." "The basement?" I hadn't even noticed a door to a basement. "Okay, stay put," I said, trying to reassure her. I headed back inside, my senses on high alert. It took me a few minutes, but I finally found the basement door hidden behind a stack of old boxes. The door was heavy, made of thick wood, and it creaked loudly as I pushed it open. The air that wafted up from below was dank and cold, sending a shiver down my spine. I descended the stairs slowly, my flashlight cutting through the darkness. The basement was vast, lined with old shelves and more piles of junk. But in the far corner, I saw something that made my blood run cold, a series of cages, each containing a person. They were emaciated, their eyes hollow and lifeless. Some were unconscious, others moaned softly. I rushed over, my mind racing. "It's okay," I said, trying to sound calm. "I'm here to get you out." As I worked to open the cages, I heard a noise behind me. I turned to see a man standing at the top of the stairs, silhouetted against the light. He was holding something in his hand, something long and sharp. "Who are you?" he demanded, his voice a low growl. "Police," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Put the weapon down." He didn't move. Instead, he started down the stairs, his eyes locked on mine. "You shouldn't be here," he said. "Put it down," I commanded, drawing my gun. He paused, his eyes flickering with something like recognition. Then, with a snarl, he lunged at me. The next few moments were a blur of motion and noise. I fired, the shot echoing through the basement. The man fell, the knife clattering to the floor. I stood there, breathing heavily, my hands shaking. The adrenaline was still pumping through my veins, but I knew I had to keep it together. I finished freeing the captives, and soon the house was swarming with police and paramedics. As they carried the survivors out, one of the detectives approached me. "Hell of a first day, huh?" "Yeah," I said, my voice hollow. "Hell of a first day." In the days that followed, the details of the case came to light. The old man had been a recluse, his descent into madness hidden from the world. He had kept his victims trapped in the basement for years, feeding off their fear and suffering. Hillary, it turned out, had been his first victim. She had been reported missing over a decade ago, and her family had long since given up hope of finding her. She was the one who had managed to escape her cage and find a way to call for help. That first day on the job changed everything. I had wanted to prove myself, and I did, but at what cost? The horrors I had witnessed would stay with me forever, a constant reminder of the darkness that lurked just beneath the surface of everyday life. Thanks for watching the video. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to watch the latest videos.